Chinese government supports putting workers first. But when you're hung from your safety harness in a display of public shaming, it might be difficult to feel the support of the party state. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. As the quintessential communist, Chinese leader Xi Jinping is all about China's workers, hobnobbing regularly with the likes of Chinese construction workers and Chinese factory workers, while also testing out some of their newly built products. What a coincidence! All those cameras were around for these totally organic, candid moments. Xi also hasn't shied away from showing China's future generation of workers how manual labor is done, toiling away with them in the sun for hours, or the 40 seconds it took to make this clip, stopping only occasionally to deliver golden slogans for the kids to live their lives by, such as telling them about the importance of pooling strength to build beautiful China. A few years back, he told China's trade unions to put workers first as well. And he has made it clear that he's counting on workers to mobilize for his emphasis on national rejuvenation. Xi is so stoked about workers that he even has reportedly been corresponding with groups of them in foreign countries like Serbia. Yep, Xi's collar is as blue as the skin of all the corpses piled up from his Uyghur genocide. Ugh. Meanwhile, back in China, there is indeed a lot owed to the efforts of the country's workers. After all, they are the ones keeping the engines running for the globe's biggest manufacturing hub. And they have been vital in enabling one of the most fast-paced construction booms in world history, although it might have moved a bit too fast in some cases. But despite their invaluable contributions and the supportive signals from the Chinese government, the actual life of many Chinese workers seems less defined by gratitude and admiration and more marked by exploitation and abuse. Which is shocking, because Chinese sweatshops have always had such a positive connotation. Those are tears of joy. Last month, for example, this footage from China's central Sichuan province went viral on Chinese social media, showing 3 Chinese construction workers suspended from a gateway in their safety harnesses after they allegedly failed to wear them during work. I have so many questions. Above the dangling workers, the gateway proclaims safety harness usage, a practical demonstration, while phrases down the side read, put people first, focus on prevention, follow the rules, ensure safety. Which are important messages, but I'm too distracted wondering how they got up there in the first place. And did they build that gate just for this? We don't know how long the workers were made to hang like that in full view of everyone at the site. While few have argued against the importance of proper safety measures at construction sites, the way that those in charge chose to publicly shame and humiliate workers has sparked outrage among many on Chinese social media. One user on the Chinese social media platform Weibo compared the display to how people were hung from city walls in ancient China, while others drew parallels to the Cultural Revolution during the Mao Zedong era, when people were lynched for things like not being communist or revolutionary enough. Now, maybe hanging signs off people's necks and forcing them to dangle off city walls back in totalitarian times was a little much, but certainly hanging people from safety harnesses in modern China can be justified, right? A lot of Chinese people don't seem to think this shaming was justified. Instead, social media users have been arguing that there's no evidence that the construction workers broke the law, even if they were being careless, and that even if they did break the law, construction managers don't have the right to exact judgment of the hanging kind. One blogger on WeChat even believes that the whole spectacle is actually just as much about something else, saying this isn't just a matter of life and limb, safety or dignity, it's also about another word, one too often overlooked, power. Adding that if the cause of the danger was a manager and not a worker, would you hang that person up? And what about the managers who failed to provide adequate safety oversight? Should we hang them up too? Hang up the leaders and take the power back for the people? What a novel idea in communist China. But the blogger has a point here. When a construction worker fails to wear a safety harness, they usually endanger their own lives at worst, while carelessness, negligence, and corruption by higher-ups in Chinese construction and infrastructure businesses have endangered hundreds and even thousands of lives. Yet, we don't see many bosses being hung up in gateways as punishment, even though their malfeasance has in fact led to terrible catastrophes. Maybe they don't hang them up because everyone just assumes whatever's holding them up will just collapse too. There have actually been so many construction disasters tied to graft and laxity that when infrastructure fails, many Chinese people just assume that it's due to corruption at the top. The most recent case took place outside China, though, in Bangkok, where the city's skyscrapers luckily made it through the shockwaves that resulted from the devastating earthquake that struck nearby Myanmar at the end of March. All except for this one, whose violent collapse led to the death of at least 15 people, with dozens still missing. Let's play Guess Which Skyscraper Was Chinese Built. I'll give you to the end of the count of it was this one. Yep, this one. The building was under construction by a Chinese state-owned company, and workers subsequently told the New York Times that the company had underpaid contractors who turned to lower quality materials and used columns narrower than usual. When Thai officials went to the site afterwards to test the twisted metal from the ruins, they said they found substandard steel bars made by a Thai factory with Chinese owners that the authorities had shut down in December. Substandard steel bars. It's actually an improvement over what I assume China usually builds with: stale pretzel sticks and chewing gum. And yet, somehow, it's not Chinese owners, but Chinese workers that are being shamed. Unfortunately, even for the workers that are not being dangled about for public spectacle, work life in China is often far from easy. During the unveiling of a new electric vehicle model in April last year, the CEO of Chinese car company IM Motors spoke about the sacrifices his workers had made to reach this sharp deadline for the EV, saying that some of our colleagues may have even missed the birth of their own children. Others tested positive for COVID several times in quick succession, yet they remained on the front lines and continued their hard work. That isn't the flex you think it is, man. That's like a plantation owner bragging about the dedication of his slaves. In a similar fashion, Chinese construction workers in Xiong'an, about 100 kilometers, 62 miles from Beijing, worked through a heat wave in the summer of 2023 to meet tight construction deadlines in the new urban area. The development of Xiong'an is a well-known pet project of Xi's, and therefore, construction there is a high priority. So even though outdoor construction work was halted in Beijing due to the scorching temperatures, it proceeded in Xiong'an, leading to construction workers reportedly facing roof surface temperatures of nearly 69 degrees Celsius, or more than 155 degrees Fahrenheit, with the skin of workers' necks breaking out in boils due to sun exposure. The whole thing was actually widely covered on Chinese state media, but instead of focusing on the appalling working conditions, CCTV posted a report on the Chinese video sharing platform Bilibili where it lauded China's rise, the People's Agency, and workers' ostensible prosperity. Can someone please get them a dictionary so they know the definition of prosperity isn't getting burned alive? And sure, Chinese workers having their skin break out in boils and missing the births of their children due to inhumane conditions imposed by exploitative bosses might sound bad, but luckily I hear nothing cures family deprivation and skin problems like an attaboy from a Chinese leader, especially Xi Jinping himself. Forget laughter or penicillin, that's the best medicine. However, somehow, it seems that a large number of Chinese workers don't share the sentiment that everything is super duper for the Chinese working class. You see, labor protests have spiked in recent years, with 777 labor protests recorded in China between September and December 2023 alone, compared with 245 in the same period of 2022. And 719 collective actions were recorded in the first half of 2024, which was likewise an increase compared to the same period in 2023. But strikes and protests have a way of causing even more hardships for those participating, as the Chinese authorities are notorious for cracking down on any public display of dissent. And by dissent, I mean politely asking, please stop destroying our lives. That goes for labor protesters as well, with many labor rights groups having faced increased police harassment and intimidation, according to Reuters. And unfortunately for Chinese workers, there aren't many other ways for them to express their dissatisfaction, since communism encourages expression the same way a ball and chain encourages pole vaulting. All Chinese labor unions, for example, are required to register with the All China Federation of Trade Unions, which is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, meaning that it must answer to the Chinese government and align its priorities even when they don't align with the interests of workers. Communism at its finest. So essentially, they're just reporting to the people in charge what the people in charge are doing. At most, this would result in a slap on the wrist when one of the people in charge misses while high-fiving each other. At the same time, Chinese workers in the country's industries and construction sector are often migrants from rural China, whose status as rural residents afford them fewer rights and services compared to their urban counterparts, which in turn makes them easier to exploit. What's even more depressing is that a lot of the examples of exploitation I've mentioned here are actually gross violations of China's own labor laws, a fact that doesn't seem to help much for Chinese laborers. It's rules for thee, not the CCP. Given the bleak circumstances, some Chinese workers have grown so desperate about their working conditions that they have actually appealed to American business leaders like Tim Cook of Apple for help pressuring Chinese suppliers to comply with labor laws. Sadly, Apple itself has violated Chinese labor laws, so there probably won't be a lot of support forthcoming from that direction. So it seems that Chinese workers will continue to suffer exploitation and exhaustion as long as the powerful in China get what they want. At least they're wearing safety harnesses. The fact that a group of construction workers were hung from their harnesses in Sichuan says less about a concern for their safety and more about the ubiquitous abuse of Chinese working people. And with the Chinese Communist Party having warped all the official channels that workers could have used to demand better terms, the only avenue that seems to be left is mobilization beyond the Chinese state system. You'd think a spontaneous mass gathering of Chinese workers in communist China sounds like the kind of movement that the Marxist-Leninist CCP by definition would have to embrace. Yeah, you'd think. But it turns out those on top in the CCP only care about workers at photo ops 40 seconds at a time. Before YouTube's algorithm sends you off to some random video, check out this video about how China is totally based, or at least that's what the CCP wants you to think. That in-depth episode is only available on our website, ChinaUncensored.tv. Click here to check it out. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.